You say their name from another room in an ordinary tone with no particular excitement in your voice, and somewhere out of sight your dog's ears lift before their body even moves. This happens so often that most owners stop noticing it as remarkable. But a series of brain imaging studies conducted on fully awake, unrestrained dogs has shown exactly what occurs inside their brain in that instant, and the findings go well beyond simple trained association. What they reveal is a neural response to your dog's own name that looks, in striking ways, like how the human brain responds to hearing something deeply familiar and personally significant. Welcome to Hidden Paw Signals. I want to begin the way I always do. Everything you hear on this channel comes from my own personal process of reading, studying, and trying to understand the published science behind dog behavior. I am not a veterinarian, a researcher, or a certified animal behaviorist. This is one person's learning journey through the world of canine cognition, shared with you because the findings genuinely changed how I see my own dog. It is educational content only and is not veterinary or medical advice. If you want to keep learning about what is really happening inside your dog's mind, subscribe now, because that is exactly what this channel is for. The scientist behind much of this work is Attila Andics, a neuroscientist at Eötvös Loránd University in Budapest, who pioneered a method of training dogs to lie completely still and awake inside a functional MRI scanner, a technical achievement that took years of patient conditioning to accomplish without sedation. This breakthrough allowed his team to do something that had never been done before at scale: directly observe the living, working brain of a dog while it processed real-time auditory information, including human speech and the dog's own name. In a study published in the journal Behavioral Brain Research, Attila Andics and his colleagues played dogs a mixture of their own name, other dogs' names, and meaningless control words, all spoken in a neutral tone to remove the variable of vocal excitement. What they found was that dogs showed a distinct and measurable difference in brain activity in the auditory regions of the temporal cortex when hearing their own name compared to unfamiliar words, even when the emotional tone of the speaker's voice was held constant. This matters enormously because it rules out the simpler explanation that dogs are merely responding to excitement in our voice. The brain itself was treating the name as a distinct, recognized category of sound, separate from generic speech. What makes this finding particularly significant is the involvement of brain regions associated with reward processing. In follow-up analyses, Attila Andics and his team observed that hearing a familiar, positively associated word activated reward-related regions of the dog brain in patterns that paralleled what is seen in humans when we hear something personally meaningful. The dog's brain was not simply pattern matching a sound to a learned cue for food or attention. It was engaging a more integrated response that combined recognition with positive emotional weight, a kind of neural signature that suggests the name itself carries meaning beyond its function as a command trigger. This research sits within a larger body of work from the same Budapest lab, examining how dog brains process human vocal communication generally. Earlier studies from this research group identified that dogs, much like humans, have specialized voice processing regions in their temporal lobe that respond more strongly to vocal sounds, including both human speech and dog vocalizations, than to non-vocal environmental noises. This was the first time voice-sensitive brain regions had been identified outside of primates, and it suggested an evolutionary convergence between how the human brain and the dog brain are wired to prioritize voice as a category of meaningful sound. Your dog's brain did not merely learn that voices matter through training. It appears to be structurally organized from a fairly fundamental level to treat voice as a privileged signal. Before we go further, an important pause. As always, everything in this video reflects my own reading and learning about published research, not professional advice. It is not veterinary guidance. If your dog shows a sudden change in their response to sound, including failing to respond to their name when they previously did, or showing signs of disorientation or hearing loss, please consult your local veterinarian. Changes in auditory responsiveness can have many causes, some of which deserve professional medical attention rather than behavioral interpretation. There is a developmental dimension to name recognition that is worth understanding. Puppies do not arrive already wired to recognize a specific sound as their name. The process by which a sound becomes a name in the functional sense your dog experiences involves repeated pairing between that specific sound and attention, reward, and social engagement from their person. What the brain imaging research suggests is that once this pairing has occurred enough times, the result is not simply a conditioned reflex in the classic behaviorist sense. The name becomes encoded as a category with its own dedicated processing signature, distinguishable in the brain from other learned cues like sit or stay, which tend to trigger more straightforward motor preparation responses rather than the broader recognition and reward pattern associated with name processing.
One detail from this research deserves particular attention because of what it implies about the emotional weight dogs may place on their own name. In the experimental design used by Attila Andics and his colleagues, the dog's own name was specifically compared against other proper nouns, including the names of other dogs the test subject did not know. The brain response was elevated specifically for the dog's own name, not for the general category of name-like words. This specificity matters. It suggests the dog brain is not responding to a grammatical category, a word that sounds like it could be a name. It is responding to a uniquely personal identifier. The sound that, across the dog's entire life with you, has meant they are the one being addressed. This connects to a broader theme that has emerged across multiple studies into canine cognition over the past 2 decades. Dogs appear to process information about themselves, their environment, and their social relationships with a level of individuated specificity that was, for a long time, assumed to be largely absent in non-primate species. The dog who responds to their name is not simply executing a trained behavior. They are, according to the neural evidence, engaging a recognition process layered with positive emotional association, built specifically around the unique sound that identifies them within your shared world. There is a practical implication in all of this that is easy to overlook. Because the name appears to carry genuine emotional and motivational weight in the dog's brain, the way you use your dog's name matters more than many owners realize. If a dog's name becomes primarily associated with correction, frustration, or being called away from something enjoyable, the powerful positive reward association documented in the Budapest research can erode over repeated negative pairings. Many trainers and behaviorists, building on this kind of cognitive research, now recommend reserving a dog's name specifically for positive, attentive interactions and using separate cues for corrections, precisely because the name itself functions as something closer to a personal, emotionally loaded signal than a neutral instruction. What strikes me most, learning through this research, is how it reframes something so ordinary it had become invisible. Saying your dog's name is not a small administrative act of getting their attention. It is, according to the neuroscience, an event that activates a specific, dedicated, emotionally weighted process in their brain, distinct from how they process almost anything else you say. Every time you call their name and they turn, ears lifting, eyes finding yours, you are witnessing a brain that has built, over the whole of your relationship, a unique neural category just for the sound of being recognized by you. As I always want to close with, everything shared here is part of my own learning process and is offered for education and reflection only. It is not professional, veterinary, or behavioral advice. If you have any concern about your dog's health or behavior, please consult a qualified local veterinarian who knows your individual dog. No video can replace that relationship. There is one more piece of this research worth sitting with because it touches on something almost every owner has experienced without a framework to explain it. Many dogs respond, at least briefly, to nicknames or affectionate variations of their actual name, words that were never explicitly trained, but that emerged naturally through repeated, warm, positively toned use. The Budapest team's broader work on voice processing suggests this is not coincidental. If the dog brain is tracking prosody, the rhythm and emotional tone layered onto familiar sounds alongside the specific phonetic pattern of the name itself, then a nickname spoken in the same warm tone and rhythmic cadence as the original name may trigger a similar recognition response, even though the actual sound pattern differs. The name, in other words, may be less a fixed password and more a category of sound, emotionally and acoustically defined, that your dog has learned to recognize across multiple variations. It is also worth noting how this research fits into the larger arc of what brain imaging has revealed about dog cognition over the past decade. Before Attila Andics pioneered awake fMRI scanning in dogs, almost everything we understood about the canine mind came from behavioral observation alone, inferring internal states from external actions. The ability to directly observe neural activity changed the kind of questions researchers could ask and the kind of confidence they could have in the answers. The name recognition findings are part of a broader picture emerging from this method, one in which the dog brain appears again and again to process socially meaningful human signals with a depth and specificity that purely behavioral studies could only ever infer indirectly. If this changed how you think about the next time you call your dog, share this with someone who has ever wondered whether their dog actually understands their name or is just reacting to tone. Leave a comment below. Does your dog respond differently to their name depending on your tone of voice? I read every comment. Subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you on the next Hidden Paw Signals. The voice and visuals in this video were created using artificial intelligence. Thank you for watching Hidden Paw Signals.